then some. Yes,
But
correct.
you left them off the table. Should we not cut them?
Well, hold on. I will address that. So the first thing, this is why I talk about Social Security and Medicare first, is because we have what's called mandatory spending. If you sat in a room with Jack Kemp, you might have heard about this term. So mandatory spending is where you get Social Security, Medicare, and SNAP benefits. Depending on what year it is, that makes up anywhere from 60 to 66% of the budget. Remaining left is somewhere between a third to maybe 4/10 of the budget, which makes up what we call discretionary spending. Only half of the discretionary spending is spent on defense. The other half of discretionary spending is for everything else. So what you're saying is that rather than going after the two biggest line items, which would have the biggest impact on the third biggest line item, you want to go to the fourth biggest line item, which might be the most important line item in the first place, which is how do we defend ourselves? Is there waste, fraud, and abuse? Fuck yeah, there is. Should we go after that? Absolutely we should, but we shouldn't act like we can't go after Social Security and Medicare. And I think anyone that starts making arguments about, they just want grandma and grandpa to starve, I think those people are the least patriotic people, because they're the people responsible for us not being allowed to have a conversation that's intelligent, that's based in fact, that's based in math, that understands sound economic principles, because they know that they need to continue to make promises that eventually they can't keep. I don't know if you realize that in 2035, the trust fund for Social Security is going to be completely busted. At that point, we will only be able to finance 71% of the liabilities for Social Security, at which time you're going to have the uncomfortable truth of either raising the age to collect, lowering the benefit that people collect, right? Some sort of combination of those two, or raising taxes. Now, I would argue, why don't we just recognize that the entire Social Security system is a fucking Ponzi scheme and completely fucking get rid of it once we've paid the liabilities to those that we've promised?
Okay, Roger. Number one, I have not said don't touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Veterans benefits is another one, you missed that. No, I haven't said that at all. What my point is they're lying to the American public. What they're telling people is, look, you can have your cake and eat it too, because we're going to throw out these huge tax cuts, and we're not going to cut any of the programs you just mentioned, let alone the Pentagon, and we're still going to be just great. It's a lie, my brother. It's a lie, and you know it. You're smart enough to know it.
Well, I think the part that you missed in this is that I'm acknowledging that we should identify waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere we find it, which includes the Pentagon. The defense budget shouldn't be immune to us going after fiscal responsibility. But I do think the part that you and I agree on is that nobody in the Trump administration has the brains or the balls to go after Social Security or Medicare. I think we agree on that part.
Well, I think they have the brains. I mean, Elon Musk, who, whatever, he came to the conclusion, the reason why he got out of Doge was he figured out, it took him a little bit, he figured out that the only way to get even close to $1 trillion, let alone $2 trillion, was to go after those programs. And they said, nope, we're not going to do that. It's too politically crazy. So this is my problem, Roger. It's very, very easy up there to cut taxes. Very easy. It's very hard to cut, very, very hard to cut the programs you just mentioned. And that is a problem. And they're lying to people because they're saying, oh, not to worry, we can cut these taxes. And we don't have to cut Social Security, Medicaid, veterans benefits. We don't have to do that. It's all fraud, waste, and abuse. That is a lie.
I think what's being missed here is this. We can nickel and dime through the defense budget. We can nickel and dime through all this other stuff. Get rid of USAID. We can nickel and dime all this stuff, which would be great. Doge is great. Oh, and by the way, Elon didn't leave for that. Elon was a special appointed I forget what it's called, like special employee.
Special government employee.
And they're only there for like
120 days.
Yeah, 120 days. That's why 120 Doge is still existent. So you guys can go nickel and dime through all these different agencies. What I think Roger's saying, I completely agree with. Eventually, the fucking thing's gonna come to a head, and someone's gonna have to just face the fucking truth, get it over with, rip the fucking band-aid off, take care of what you need to do. It's gonna fucking suck, but dude, someone is going to have to attack the Social Security thing. That's the only way to get this thing under control. It has to be done.
So, one thing, Dragons, any comment about right now the count, at least according to the USDebtClock.org, is Doge so far is trimmed $540 billion, $500 billion. So at least they're 1/4 to the promise of the $2 trillion. Now that could be a cumulative over programs that were canceled, that they had promises that were going to continue for a certain amount of months, so it continues to add up. I'm not sure exactly how that gets calculated. However, I don't think it's just $150 billion.
Hold on. I think you folks think I'm against cutting spending. You'd be wrong. What I'm saying is the ability of the Congress to cut taxes far exceeds its political will to cut spending.
Dragons, do you see any benefit to cutting taxes at all?
Oh, well, sure. The taxes should be zero. Let's have it be zero. But the problem is...
wait, hold on. Who said that? That's the smartest thing I've ever heard.
Broke.
Go for it.
You're going to go broke. You will go broke. And that's what they're doing.
No, I think...
They're saying we can cut the taxes. Hold on, Roger. Let me roll just a little bit. You can cut all the taxes, but not go after the entitlement programs, what you call the uncontrolled spending programs. But they're not. All the Congress has to do is change the law. Then they're not, automatic.
So what do you want to do? Increase corporate taxes and then force companies offshore again? I mean, just think about the fact, and that was one of the things Trump ran on, is to bring business back, which businesses have committed to come back. But you want to increase taxes and just, you're going to force that.
And he wants to
You're going to
piss off
force
the rich
the exodus again.
He wants to piss off the rich people.
I have a question. When we talk about these numbers, like,
Piss off
2
the rich
trillion.
people. Like that's just done. Like,
Wait, I have a question. When we talk about these billions and trillions of dollars, and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. What I was looking at is that it's like, let's say it's like 400 million Americans and $2 trillion. That's like, I don't know if I'm doing the right numbers. It's like just like the baseline. That's like $3,500 per American in like a deficit. Like if we're talking about like that's how much we're spending on everybody. Like I personally think everybody's worth more than $3,500, but it's like, how can we break it down to like, maybe like, oh, this costs 150 billion, but it's like, okay, this is like 25 cents for every person. Like, it's not like a big, large investment. I think sometimes these numbers is like,
You take the appropriations in Congress and you divide them over the total.
Wait, hold on. I'll do the math for you because there's a nice calculator that Congressman Massey was kind enough to put together for us. The debt per taxpayer is $323,052.
Yeah, Roger's right. The problem is people don't understand the massive nature of the problem. They're diluting them.
So Dragons, though, let me ask you, wouldn't it? Maybe I missed something. There wasn't any tax cuts. It was just a continuation of the same tax rate that we've had for the last 10 years. So wouldn't that lead to confirm Mojo's point about us having a spending issue? If we've already gone a decade on this amount of taxes and we're bringing in record revenue, wouldn't that lean more that we're having, like, we're not cutting taxes? Or did I miss?
Well, Joe, maybe you should become Lindsey Graham's friend, because according to Lindsey Graham, the cost of this bill is there is no cost. It's, in fact, we're going to get $350 billion. Do you agree with that, Matt?
No, it was just about your taxes comment, saying that.
Don't do that, Joe.
No, but that's how Lindsey Graham's decided to score the bill.
I think we are. I think it will be a deficit. I'm not advocating for
Oh,
I think it's an overspending issue, as Mojo pointed out, especially when we've had the same tax rate for the last decade, and now this just extends the taxes, right?
Joe.
The tax rate, correct? Like, so how much should we pay the Dragons
but I think,
to offset the spending? What would
yeah,
you?
here's what I think.
Americans should
I'm
like
stupid.
2% of our income.
I'm really stupid. So I have this weird idea, and I've had it for 40 years, is that we ought to take in as much as we spend. Isn't that a radical goddamn idea? That's what I think the, quote, appropriate level of taxation is to pay for the programs the American public want. The deficit is defined in my world as the difference between the programs the American people want as opposed to the ones they're willing to pay for.
Okay.
Don't you agree with that?
No, hold on. I'm going to completely disagree with that because I can't. I've yet to find a single tax-paying American that wants to pay for gender studies in Pakistan. I think that when we think about the way that the government spends money, we don't have a lot of say in this at all. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that you want a balanced budget amendment, but you don't want to say that because what that really would mean is we would restrict spending. So what you're getting at is you think that if the people want to spend
I don't know what's just on my phone. But it crashed.